This is Siddhi. Today we are going to talk about the different types of therapies that are used in autism intervention. Okay, this is a very confusing area for most of the parents because there are various therapies that are available for autism, and it's very difficult for parents to understand which therapy technique to choose and what to do. So hopefully by the end of today's video we should be able to understand what are the different types of therapy techniques and how should you pick and choose therapy technique depending on the goal that you have identified from your child's profile. Okay, so in a broad range, these are the kind of therapy techniques that you have. So you have some therapy techniques which are adult led therapy techniques, and there are some which are child led therapy techniques. And the ones in the middle are primarily therapy techniques that are involved in bringing out the skill sets from the two extreme areas and creating a sort of a middle ground for the child. Okay, so let's start first with adult led therapy techniques. So most of these therapy techniques, as after diagnosis, parents are familiar with. So ABA, OT is ABA, OT, speech are three therapy techniques that typically all parents tend to get into. Some parents will also get into special ed, and some parents will also get into group therapies at some point in the future. The common point among all of these therapy techniques is that they're led by the adult, means the adult is placing a demand and the child is supposed to be responding to it. Almost all of these therapy techniques have a compliance element to it, means the child is supposed to listen to you, and most of them have sitting as a concept in it. So they are sitting based therapies, means the child has to sit in one place and do it. Okay, the adult could place any sort of a command demand, like say for example ABA you might have a give ka program or a match ka program. In OT you might have put in the puzzle or put in the bead or cut. In physio it might be a particular exercise that the therapist is getting the child to do. In oromotor it could be, that the therapist is asking the child to bite something or open the mouth, hold the mouth open to do the massage, or asking the child to label something, what is this, like that. In special education it could be, writing, it could be matching, it could be sorting. In group therapies you would typically have one their group therapies are normally run by speech therapists, ABA therapists, psychologists, or OT. But you would typically have one main therapist, and there would be who's running the show, and there would be juniors who are, or the parents who are acting as shadows within the with the child. So, if you notice, what is the common point among all of these therapies? Number one, they are adult led, means the adult is placing a demand, the adult is telling the child what to do. Number two, they have a pre requirement for compliance, means if the adult tells you to do something, you're supposed to do it and you're made to. If you don't do it, then you're made to do it. Okay. Three is that they are very they requires, most of them require sitting as a factor. Okay, so what are the strengths, what are the benefits of doing these therapies, adult-led therapy? So one of the biggest positive that you get out of adult-led therapies is attention, because it's an intensive one-on-one therapy that is done with the child. The child learns to pay attention to what you're saying, what you're to look down, to pay attention to the material, to follow the command, and to execute the command. Okay, that leads to compliance because the child understands that you're supposed to listen to what the adult is saying, you're supposed to answer questions, you're supposed to, follow the command that is told. Most of the time the listening is at short distance, so they are able to hear and attend to the person as long as the person is at the short distance and giving the command. Okay, it obviously helps with the sitting behavior because that's like the basic thing that is worked on most of the adult led therapy techniques. And this therapy technique is mainly used when you want to teach parts of a task to reach to a end product task. So say for example, I want echoics, which is a prerequisite for speech. And if my child doesn't have it, then I can bring it in by first starting with imitation as a program in which I teach him to do object imitation, then gross motor imitation, then fine motor imitation, oral imitation, sound imitation, and then echoics as a concept. But teaching these skill sets like object imitation, uh, gross motor imitation in a general environment when the child is moving around is very difficult because they are tasks. They're tasks which require the child to focus attention, pick up what the person is doing, and execute it. So it's more easier to teach them on the table, across the table. Okay, so tabletop is very, very, very useful in that way to teach the child to pay attention to parts of the task which can then be pulled together. Okay, what is the limitation of adult-led therapy techniques? So because these are so if you look at the adult-led therapy techniques, they are basically the adult is teaching and instructing the child. So it doesn't teach the child what to do when the adult is not teaching or instructing the child, which causes a behavior in the child's mind that if the adult is there, they stay on, their attention is on, their listening is on, their looking behavior is on. Once the adult moves out, they stop performing. Okay, so this leads to prompt dependence, wherein the child does everything only when he or she is around. And you'll see examples of these in they when parents give you feedback. They will say things like, "Okay, he can do the puzzle, but I have to be sitting next to him. I have to wait next to him. If I move away, he will get up and he'll run away, or he'll stop doing it." This is a genuine limitation of adult-led therapy technique. Okay. Second problem that you have is that the performance is related to a therapeutic environment. So, because all of the therapy techniques, if you see in adult-led therapy techniques, all the therapy techniques are essentially in an artificial setup. What happens is that when the child moves out of the setup, he or she does not understand how to take them out. So you would have feedback from parents like, say, for example, he does a particular program very well with the therapist in the room. I have seen videos of him doing it, or I have seen it in the CCTV camera. But if I ask him to do it, he doesn't do it, you know, or he does it very well if I'm sitting on the table and chair, but if I ask the same thing outside, he doesn't do it. Or you have a child who's very verbal, can answer questions and everything on the table, but outside the table does not know how to talk. So all of these behaviors are because of the fact that it is limited. The performance is limited to a particular environment or place or object or a person. Okay, because all of these tasks, the other aspect is that all of these tasks are basically tasks, right? There's a demand, there's an expectation from the person, from the adult, correct? So it is not perceived as fun from by the child, uh, and that is a problem because at the end of the day, um, you want it to become functional. So this is where you will have feedback like the parents will say, "Oh, he was doing all of those things, but I took a break. I couldn't practice it, and now he has forgotten." He has not forgotten. He has basically, you know, he has not. He doesn't see the functional use of that thing beyond that material. Okay. Similarly, say for example, parents will come up and say, he avoids me after away from the table. If I'm at the table, he works with me, but once I leave the table, he avoids me because he sees the adult as a task. He sees the adult as he or she doesn't see the functional value of why you're doing all of that tabletop work, whether it is nouns, whether it is actions, whether it is putting in program, whether it is exercise. He or she doesn't see the functional value of it. So they see the task as a task and not fun, which prevents spontaneity because spontaneity will only come if you see the fun part of it, if you see the use of it in real life. Okay. Overall, because all of these programs are typically demand based, there's a lot of fast speech, there's a performance expectation that has to happen there's a performance expectation that is errorless, so you're not allowed to make a mistake, you're supposed to perform fast. What happens is that it creates stress in the child, which again makes it so that they don't like these programs. However, having said that, there are some children who may like these structured programs, but even among those children, you will see that they are fine with doing the same program again and again. But if you change it, if you bring in a new program, that is when you're going to see them resisting, getting agitated, avoiding the task, aggressive, crying, and protesting. Okay, so this is a genuine limitation of these are the genuine limitations of adult-led therapy techniques. Okay, now let's look at child-led therapy techniques. Child-led therapy techniques are opposite of adult-led therapy techniques. So here the child is the one that is at the lead and the adult is at a response stage. The pressure on the child is less. There is absolutely no demand on the child in the sense of you have to perform. Okay. So it could be, say, for example, if you have play therapies like Sunrise or Dawson's Imitation, where there would be a room created and, the child's favorite toys and material are kept over there, sensory material are kept, and the child is allowed to explore and play by himself. And the adult joins in by either, doing commenting next to the child or walking next to the child, staying in proximity, imitating what the child is doing, so but there is no force, there is no pressure to perform. Or if it is like, say, the child the sensory integration therapist is working on exposing the child to sensory stimuli that he or she doesn't enjoy, so the therapist will not pick up and force the child on it. So if, say, for example, if it is messy play, they don't like messy play, the therapist might bring in something like shaving foam, and she would initially start off with just herself playing with the shaving foam and letting the child explore it, maybe smell it initially, tolerate the sight of it, and maybe at some point in the future he may touch it with the fingertip, and months down the line he may learn to enjoy it to a certain degree. So it's a gradual process, it's not a forced process. Similarly, picture exchange communication system, AVAS, and pivotal response train therapy, all three have a common point that you pick what the child likes and you encourage the child to communicate for that thing by using either pictures, by using AVAS, by using signs or words. So, say for example, if the child likes bubbles, you will see the therapist blowing a little bit of few bubbles and then waiting for the child to ask for more. The child can ask by speaking the word bubble. The child can ask by signing. The child can ask using a card or clicking on Avas. Haynen's protocol is a more higher level child-led therapy technique where the child is basically somebody who is already verbal, and you're working on more question answers and sentences. But unlike on table, where you on tabletop in adult-led therapy techniques, where you would show a picture and ask where is the boy sitting or where is the boy girl going or what is the boy doing, what in Haynen's protocol what they would do is they would create a story in a pretend play format, and the therapist would do commenting and then she would put in questions in it. So if she creates a scene of, say, for example, a park, the therapist would talk about what is happening, and she would then ask, oh, where is the boy sitting or where is the boy running, and expect a answer from the child. But overall it is very much child led. There is very minimal sitting requirement other than Haynen's protocol. Remaining four do not actually require sitting as a behavior. Um, and there is very less demand placed on the child. So if the child doesn't perform, you do not penalize the child. You just sort of wait the child to work it through. So or you bring it to the level that the child can manage. But it's very, very, very child friendly. So the positive part, because it is so child friendly, what happens is that the child is less stressed in these set of in these therapy techniques. So they find that they enjoy them. Uh, they are motivated towards going to these therapies, and when they're done with it, they're not overwhelmed and they're not shut down. Okay, because again these therapy techniques are child led. They promote engagement because you're going at the child's pace, you're not talking too fast, you're not placing a demand on the child. So the child enjoys the interaction between the adult and the child. Okay, because the child enjoys the interaction between the adult and the child, there are more chances of spontaneous imitation coming in. Like, say for example, you have in SI, or if you have in Halen's protocol, or if you have in play therapies, you would have the adult imitating, and then you would have some sort of challenge line placed for the child to try something new. And if the child does it, great. If he doesn't do it, we don't force it. So the imitation that comes in is a more spontaneous, naturalistic imitation rather than demand based. And you will find that when you use these therapy techniques, the parents will give feedback that the child actually starts hanging around with them, wanting to be with them more than what you see with adult led therapy techniques. Okay, overall, because the child is with you, around you, engaging with you, it creates opportunities for communication in a more practical setup, in a more uh, with the child's interest, rather than a forced communication setup like you see in tabletop. Okay, but what are the limitations? So the limitations are, the first biggest limitation is that it does not the since these therapy techniques do not work on demand, you all the attending and listening that you get is limited to the child's interest. So the child, as long as the child is interested, the child will attend. If the child is not interested, the child will not attend and will not listen. So this becomes a problem because not everything that we teach to our children can be limited, can be, you know, streamlined through their interests. There are many things that we have to teach which they will not have interests for. Like, say for example, if I were to teach him to eat food, okay, by himself. Many children are not interested in eating food by themselves. They would rather, somebody feeds them and goes ahead. If, say, for example, I want to do writing behavior, I'm not going to be able to teach a child to just write without sitting in one place. Okay, they have to sit in one place and they have to write. Classroom behavior cannot be taught with with the child's interest catered into it. It is a adult led therapy technique because you have to teach the child to sit, focus, listen, pay attention. If I want to teach him a concept that he's not interested in, again, he has to pay attention to it. Okay. So it limits the amount, kind of stuff that the child learns because it's very, very, very limited to what the child wants. Okay. Second is the compliance is poor because the child is not used to the concept of not getting his way. Whenever things don't go his way, he or she is going to resist, is going to protest, is and many a times will also lead to a meltdown because they can't deal with the frustration that comes in with not getting what he or she wants. So compliance is poor, which is practically a problem because many a times in life, if your compliance is poor, you cannot really get out of the room that easily, you know because you need some degree of compliance when you go out, when you stay in the house, when you go out of the house, when you move around in your environment. So that is a problem that is there. Communication does develop, true, but it develops only to the basic level because everything beyond nouns and actions is a demand. So, say for example, if my child comes up and says, I want a chocolate, and if I, so that's fine. A child on the spectrum would be able to do that. But if I ask him, how many pieces do you want, that becomes a demand, okay, which has to be taught in a structured format, in an adult led format for him to be able to answer, right? So the communication, that's why, it doesn't develop beyond that point. Similarly, the language that is developed, especially when you teach in a structure, in a scripted, the language that is developed is many a time scripted. So basically, the child understands in that scenario, with that storybook, with that pretend play, he understands what he or she is supposed to say. But once you move out of that place, they're not able to do it. So, say for example, if you ask, if there's a story created and there is a doll sitting in the car and riding, and if you ask where is the doll sitting, the child can say the doll is sitting in the car. However, if, say for example, I take the same in as a where question and I take it outside, and I show him a picture of a boy sitting in a bus, and I ask him where is the boy sitting. Now here the word bus has to replace the word car, correct? That sort of a thinking doesn't come because he has learned the script. The girl is sitting in the car. But adjusting the script to change, remove the car and put the bus in is something that the child has not been taught to do. Okay, so that is where the child will get stuck. He will either use the wrong sentence or he will not speak at all. Okay, so that's a limitation that is there. Now, middle ground systems are basically systems that are more focused towards uh, in catering to the environment, changing the child's environment to work with the child, training other people so that the skills are used across different places. They focus on generalization, they focus on self regulation. Okay, so if you look at visual schedules are one of the most common things that you would have heard as parents or as professionals. Visual schedules are very useful because they tell a child what is going to happen with him in his day. Okay, so they help the child move between the therapeutic times and understand what happens between therapeutic times. Work systems, waiting, play alone are three areas that never get worked in the child led or adult led therapy techniques, but are very important because if you remember when we talked about making a profile, leisure is an important skill set, ADLs is an important skill set. Okay, independence is an important skill set. These don't get worked out. If you want leisure, ADLs, independence as a skill set, work system, waiting, play alone are the ways to go, which never get covered in either of the previous types of therapy techniques. Okay. Social story is basically there are times when you are not in that place and you want to teach the skill set before getting to that place. So say for example, I want to teach my child to go to the shop. If I directly take him to the shop and teach him, there's a high likelihood that he's going to get overwhelmed by by the noise, by the crowd, by the number of things that are there, and I may get hyperactivity, I may get shouting, I may get fixative behavior. But if I create a social story, I tell him what is going to happen when how he's supposed to behave when he goes to the shop at home multiple times till the time he's digested it, he will find it easier to take it in when he actually goes to the shop. So, social stories are very useful for teaching a whole concept together. Similarly, mini schedules are useful for when you are moving away from one spot to another and during transition. So, say for example, my schedule may show that we are going to therapy. Okay, so in the child's mind, I'm going to sit in the car, I'm going to go to therapy, and I'm going to come back, sit in the car and come back. But today, if I decide that I'm going to go to the therapy and then I'm going to go to the shop and I'm going to come back, now that change the child will not accept. The child will have a meltdown or would become hyper or resist, which will be very difficult to manage. So mini schedules are useful that way because you could write down those changes and tell the child before he goes to school, before he goes to therapy. You carry the mini schedule because one of the problems with visual schedules is that they are fixed in one spot. You can't carry them from one spot to another. So mini schedule, you can carry it, tick it as it gets done, come back home, and then put it in the finish. So the child will take the change that goes outside the house more easily. Okay, mini schedules are also very useful for routine based tasks like brushing, bath. Okay, Life coaching in environment. Life coaching in environment is basically application and generalization. Application means whatever you have taught in your child-led therapy technique, to apply it in different environments. So, say for example, if I've taught my child to use PECs to communicate and ask for something, then I take him to the shop and I uh, teach him to exchange the card and buy what he wants. Okay. If I have taught the child to sit in one place, do the worksheet by himself, work alone by himself, then I teach him to do the same thing in a classroom. So it's life coaching within the environment. The third place that life coaching works a lot is where you have a lot of subjectivity. Like social interaction is a very subjective concept, because even if you teach basic social skills like sharing, turn taking in a therapeutic room, that does not actually look the same when you go outside, because it changes. Every child's garden is going to be different, every child's friend circle is going to be different, every child's activities that the society does is going to be different. So me teaching one particular activity in the, like, through catch and throw in the therapeutic room is not going to be of any use if the kids in his society don't play catch and throw, they play cycling or they play on slide and swing. So it is more useful for us to teach those skill sets in their environment rather than teach something artificial which cannot be moved out. Similarly, if you're having conversations, it's having conversations are fine in a therapeutic room, but keep in mind they're artificial because you are an adult who's interacting with a child, conversing with a child. Whereas a child conversing with another child is very different. Okay, so it's useful to do life coaching to essentially customize the therapy that you're teaching. Also, some things are not possible to teach in therapeutic room. Like, say for example, if I want to teach a life skill like putting washing machine clothes, putting on the washing machine. Now, there's no use me teaching putting on the washing machine in my house. It's more useful for him to learn to put on the washing machine in his house. If I want him to learn to put vessels back in the place, I it is more useful for me to teach it in his house. So teaching within the environment ensures that the subjectivity is maintained, and you don't add extra steps in which have to be undone. Like, I don't have to teach the child to learn to cut potato in my session and then figure out how to cut potato with his knife and his in his kitchen. I directly teach it in his kitchen. Okay, what are the benefits of it? The benefit of it is, one is that because you're using visuals and you're moving skill sets, you're using visuals, you're able to move the skills that are learned from one arena to another arena more easily, and that encourages the child to transit more smoothly from one spot to another. Like, say for example, it's more easier if I have a card which says that we are going to do sit down and talk, which I use to teach the child to sit down and tell me what he's seeing in the society. And then I can take the same card and use it in the mall. He will understand what he's supposed to do. I take the same card and use it in the school, and he'll understand what he's supposed to do. So the card helps me to transfer a skill set across places. Same way, I can take the same card and give it to the father who doesn't work with him regularly, and he or she will he will understand how to. The child will understand that he has to do the same thing with the father. So it encourages skills to transfer from one place to another. Second is, it gets attention, because children on the spectrum generally don't give 100% attention to all auditory input. They pick and choose what they're going to hear. So if you have a visual cue, they will 100% pay attention to what you're saying, because the visual cue acts as a anchor to the speech that you're speaking. Okay, and it is less aggressive than some taking the child's face and turning it to your face and getting the child to look at you and talk. Okay, overall, because you're using so much visuals and you're working with the child's environment, and you're making sure that you apply the skill sets in the environment, and you're preparing the child tends to be less anxious and more calmer, because of all of these mid-level program techniques, okay, which helps with self-regulation and which helps with independence. Okay. Also, because you teach self-regulation and independence as skill sets using play alone work and work systems, the child actually will be able to understand what to do when my adult is not engaging with me, which preempts a lot of inappropriate behaviors that are generally points of concerns for parents. Okay. Now, what is the limitation? The limitation is that the all of this requires a lot of material being developed, which is what parents and therapists don't want to do. They feel it's more easier if the child just listens to them. Second problem that you have is that there's a lot of proactive planning that is required. You cannot just go and wing it. You have to think about what is going to happen, and how you're going to deal with the situation. Now, as a person who works with autistic children, I feel this is a non negotiable part. Why is it a non negotiable part? Because when you're working with autistic individuals, one of the first things that they require is to understand what is happening with them, because they are not able to get that information by themselves. So it is, if somebody, if when parents and therapists tell me that I don't want to prepare him, or I don't want to use a visual schedule, I don't want to use a structure, then that is basically, according to me, someone telling that I don't want to use glasses for somebody who has myopia. Okay. Lastly, it is bulky to carry a lot of this material, which many a times we have to sort of be a little bit creative to figure out what would work. Okay. So what is the answer? Do we choose one technique or other? No. The answer is that you don't choose any one technique as a as a dedicated technique. The way you work with is you figure out your child's profile, you understand what is it that you want to teach the child, and then you figure out which technique will match and teach that to the child. So say for example, if I want to teach communication to the child, I will start with a child-led therapy technique like PECS, PRT, or AVAS. Okay, if I want the child to engage with me, connect with me, not run away from me, then I would use play-based techniques to work with the child. Okay, if I want the child to learn to sit, pay attention, listen to commands, understand nouns, understand concepts like prepositions, adjectives, I would use an adult-led therapy technique like ABA or OT. If I want the child to be independent, I would use work system. So it's basically based on what you want your child to learn. At any given point of time, when you're teaching, any program can go through all of this process. So, say for example, if I'm teaching prepositions, on the first level, I will teach the prepositions on the table because they're more easier to understand if I take the material and I limit the area that the child has to pay attention to, and I teach the on and under over there. Okay, once he is understood as a concept receptively, means he, if I say put it on, he's able to do it, and put under, he's able to do it, then I do it expressively. Then I will move it out into the environment, okay, and get him to do it maybe around the house. Okay, so that becomes more a mid-level therapy technique. All right, but when will it become child-led? It will become child-led when I go and maybe purposely hide his toy under something and then ask him where is it. That is a child-led. It has become play. Okay, so every technique. So when you pick and choose technique, you should not have a loyalty for any particular technique. You should be looking at what is it that I want, which technique will help me achieve that, and that's how you should be picking and choosing technique. Now, another complexity you have is, if you notice, when I gave the therapy points, the technique, the names of the techniques, I gave the names of the techniques. So like speech therapy, OT, special ed, but you need to look into what is a therapist actually doing, because all of us as professionals, we are evolving, so you pick up a lot of strategies from different people. So you can't say that ABA is equal to tabletop, or OT is equal to tabletop, or special ed is equal to tabletop. You need to look at what a speech is equal to tabletop. You need to look at exactly what is the therapist doing, and how that, whether that is matching with the goal that you're looking for, and whether you need to change that, okay, or whether you want to sustain with that. So that is how you would basically, the whole idea is, it is profile, goal, and the technique that matches, lets you reach the goal. That is how it works. Okay, so I hope today I've reduced some amount of the confusion that parents have when it comes to understanding which therapy technique to use with their children. um, that's it for today. Thank you.